All right, I think we are live. So welcome everyone to another live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here, and hopefully you're having better weather than we're having currently. It's rainy and dark here in Pittsburgh today. But anyway, so like all the other live streams here, we're going to go for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I may cut it off a little bit earlier here, but hopefully go for at least an hour and a half. And I'll always be giving priority answering to anyone who's a member or anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks. And we'll just answer the questions here and just hang out. So thanks, Charlie Boy, for joining, and Trucking Car Guy and Kyle, thanks for joining in, guys. Hope you're all having a good weekend as well. Radio, she says, hey, Matt, hope you and the family are doing well. Can't wait for the 5-year of Bullet video. Yeah, that's going to be coming up here this week, and it'll be crazy. And I actually finally have some updates on the car, some interesting things to talk about compared to the last few years where it was like, yep, it's good, nothing to really report. This year there's some things to report and some interesting stuff to cover, so stay tuned for that this week. And Rodrigo's here. Rafael, thank you so much, guys, for joining in. Bribey says, when's the next Armada coming out? Well, now that there's been rumors, according to the dealer meetings, that Infiniti is going to be doing a new QX80 here for an actual new generation thing, supposedly. And they said sometime, I believe in the next few months, that should be coming. I would assume that after the QX80 comes, we will get the Armada version as well. So I would say maybe 2025 model year coming next year, something like that potentially. We'll see, but that would be my best guess. And Mark, thanks for joining. And MDKN says, finally made it to another one. Finally had a break in my crazy life. I totally can relate to that. Totally understand. And yeah, thanks for joining. But no pressure, because trust me, I know how life gets in the way of a lot of things. Anyway, FR8 Productions Review says, hey, Matt, we bought a 2024 Chevy Trax thanks to your review. We love having a tiny payment and plenty of options. Great SUV. I'm so glad you guys liked it. That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's still one of the best values out there right now. It is just so much car, so much room, a good amount of power for the money, and just a really great little thing. You guys will see on Tuesday, I will be covering the Buick version and I'll be posting my review of that. And even just the stuff I can talk about, I can't talk about drive impressions yet, but the stuff I can talk about, the exterior and the interior are still so nice. And, even for just a few $1,000s more than the Trax, give you some nice little improvements there. But I mean, the bottom line, end of the day, the Trax still has all the same room, all the same features, basically, for a few grand less as well. So there's certainly advantages to both, but the Trax is a great little thing. Congrats on being able to pick one up. Rodrigo says, random question. Was it sad to sell your first car? It was definitely sad. Because that was a car that had been in my family for about 10 years, and kind of grew up with that car, and just needed to trade it in order to afford my dream car at the time, the Subaru Legacy GT Spec B. And so it was sad trading it in, and yeah, it was a good car. It was put through all kinds of stuff, 2 accidents, and but it was always reliable. It was the first reliable car my dad owned, because he had a bunch of domestic vehicles, Fords primarily in the past, that just were horrible cars and always were nickel and diming him. And that Subaru Impreza, 1997 Subaru Impreza, was my first car. That was the first car that he owned that finally was like a good, solid, reliable car. And he's been a Subaru fan for life ever since, because it was the first car that finally treated him well. So, yeah, great question. Thanks for asking, Rodrigo. Jill and Ace of Spades have joined, and thanks for joining, everyone. And so let me see. Odd Frame says hello as well. Ace of Spades says, I ended up taking the channel's advice and passed on the rebuild title vehicles. So back to the drawing board. Used car prices are really a gut punch. Yeah, it is tough. And like I think you might have heard me say last week, I'm thinking maybe things will drop a little bit here this fall. If the dominoes start falling as far as, people not being able to afford stuff here once the student loan payments start back up in September and October, that may cause people to sell off their stuff and do some fire selling, which could, drive the used car prices down. But I mean, yeah, it's impressive how dealers are still struggling to even get inventory. And like the Mercedes dealer where Beth leased her past 2 Mercedes, they like keep sending us letters in the mail, like, please, like, sell your car to us. We're having a big car buying sale. And like, they're all desperate because the auction prices are crazy. So the best bet for them is to like try and pry cars out of people's hands instead, because they'll get a better deal, most likely buying off of someone who doesn't know what their car is worth versus the auction where, stuff's going for top dollar still. So it's tough to stock the used stuff still. But they could just make it a whole lot easier on themselves by not having markups on the new stuff, and then more people will be able to afford those. But I digress. Wild Frame says, my first car was a 1989 Volkswagen Golf 2 1.6 GTD turbo diesel, 75 horsepower. That was, I'm sure, a fun little car, though. I'm sure, you really had to wring that thing out to get the most out of it. And very cool little fun car. All right, other questions here. So I see Bryce says, would you trade the Bullet for the Nismo Z? Definitely not. No interest in the Nismo Z personally. I'm sure it'll be a fun car, but not my thing at all. Mark says, 8 months into the 2022 Civic SI and still loving it. So much fun to drive and upwards of 36 mpg on the highway. That's awesome. Yeah, I really fell in love with the Civic SI. I really hope they do some kind of minor change to it so I have another excuse to do another review on an SI, because I really want to spend another week with one, because I really love that little car. It was so good. So no surprise to hear that you're loving yours. I'm so glad, though, that it's been a good car for you. And let me see. So Luke says, I'm considering a new Honda Accord hybrid, but a little worried about the longevity of a hybrid system versus the fuel economy advantage. The good thing is, with those types of hybrid systems, they are extremely reliable. And honestly, I would argue that you probably have better luck if you're going to keep a car for, 500,000 miles or something crazy like that. I would say that I would rather have the hybrid compared to the turbocharged engines that are required in the other Accords. Obviously, turbocharged vehicles can also be very, very reliable, but it's just one extra component. It, does put more strain on an engine, and the engines are supposed to be built for that. But, with the hybrid stuff, it's a naturally aspirated motor, and the hybrid stuff, I mean, that's the kind of systems they've been using in the Prius that's been, rock solid reliable for years and years. It's the same kind of stuff in the Hondas, and Hondas, the insights of way back when, I mean, they have a lot of experience with hybrid, production and all that. And the hybrid batteries aren't bad to replace, if you need to, because they're so small and it's not a huge deal. And I mean, even, if you look at, like, I think San Francisco and New York have the hybrid Ford Escapes, like the second generation, I believe, Ford Escapes, or like the refreshed first generation Ford Escapes with that hybrid system from, 15 years ago. Those will do insanely high miles. And so, yeah, if I actually wanted the most reliable Accord, I would go for a hybrid version right now, especially. Again, not like there's anything wrong with the turbo motor. I think there was someone on the Mileage Impossible Facebook page that got over 200,000 miles already out of the new 1.5T in the Civics. So there's no reason why those motors can't go, many miles as well. But yeah, I'd go hybrid for sure, honestly. So Raphael says, by the time you got to the end of the Type S video, I was sure you'd announce today that you bought one. If I needed something with 4 doors, especially since the Bullet has held its value so well, I could almost do an even trade. Not quite. I'd probably have to kick in several $1,000s still, but I could totally swing one if I wanted to right now if I swap the Bullet for it, but I just, thankfully, we're in a place where we have the 2 cars, and with always having a press vehicle and stuff, I don't need a 4-door car. So I have the luxury of being able to have, a 2-door, somewhat impractical vehicle. But if life was different and I needed something, that was either 4 doors or something that just wasn't rear-wheel drive, if we had worse winters, and I wanted front-wheel drive, I would very strongly consider a Type S. The only thing I will say that I didn't include in my video on the Integra Type S is that, I don't like getting too into the weeds with all the comparisons, because I try and keep it to the stuff that is in the same price range, same kind of power levels and all that. But I think for me, if it was my money and I, was really trying to be conservative about spending my money, I still have to say that the Elantra N probably offers about 85 to 90% of the fun of the Integra Type S, if I'm totally honest, for, 15 grand less. So I still, even though the Integra is amazing, and if you have 50 grand to spend, that's where I'd spend my 50 grand if I needed, 4 doors and a hatch. But, if you're trying to save some money, I think that you're not going to miss out on that much fun going for an Elantra N. I think the driving position is better. The shifter is way better than the Acura. The Acura has a lot of advantages, but for a 15 grand discount, I think the Elantra N is good enough that I'd be totally fine and happy with that. If I wanted something, big power like that. So, if it were me and my money, I may just go for an Elantra or a Civic SI even for that matter, and just be happy with something like that instead of spending that money. But if I, again, had 50 grand to spend, I do love them a lot. But yeah, that car I really fell in love with. That was so sad to see them take that this week because I didn't want it to go. Kyle says, my mom bought her lease out earlier this year. She has a 2019 Trax and only has 4,989 miles on it. She was able to buy it for only 14,900 pre-taxes and fees. Her dealer wants to buy it from her badly. I bet. That's great. I'm so glad that the lease buyout worked out for her, and I'm glad that some of these companies at least are letting people buy out their leases still, because some of these companies weren't even letting people do that in the height of the inventory crisis here. So that's great. She was able to get a good deal on it there. CK said, if you had the choice, would you go for the TLX Type S or the Integra Type S? I think for me, just because I love manuals so much, every single car I've ever owned or bought myself, aside from, again, the Maki, which is, again, a combined purchase with Beth and I, but everything I've bought has been a manual. So for me, I've really, really loved that engagement. And so I would probably go on Integra Type S, even though if you want the most stuff per dollar and the most horsepower per dollar, the TLX Type S is better. I mean, it's what, $5,000 more, and you get cooled seats, you get, all the extra luxuries, all the extra comfort, the extra space, although not that much extra space. Honestly, you get a bigger car, but doesn't mean you have more legroom. The TLX is kind of a fail as far as packaging. They didn't package the interior great, so you don't have a lot of legroom. But I think TLX, I'm more of a GT cruiser kind of guy as far as the stuff that I typically have owned in the past. But I think for that one, I would go Integra just for the manual. If the TLX came with a manual, I'd strongly consider it a lot more, but I think Integra for me. Says, hey, Matt, I hope you're doing well. The wedding was yesterday and it was amazing. Heading out to our honeymoon now. Hope everyone here has a great day. Well, thanks for stopping in and saying hi. Totally unnecessary. I'm sure you've been having a great weekend here, and congrats on your wedding yesterday. That is awesome. I hope it all went smoothly. Congrats to you and your significant other. That's awesome stuff. And hope you have a great honeymoon. And it's so exciting. And I actually had a very good day yesterday. So since you mentioned that, I will say yesterday was actually my birthday. So good date picking there. But so I had a great day yesterday as well. So I'm glad we're all celebrating and full of joy yesterday. So huge congrats, and thanks again for stopping by. Have a great honeymoon. MDKN says, Matt doesn't want to get rid of the Bullet, guys. Quit pestering him. Very true. Although there have been many cars over the past 5 years here that have been very tempting and have tested my allegiance to the Bullet for sure. MDKN also says, yeah, try getting an Elantra N for 15 grand less than an Integra Type S. I guess, I mean, I think it's one of those things that depends on where you live and how much of a deal you're willing to hunt down. It could be even a greater gap, but I think the Elantra Ensign has been out for a while, and now there's a refresh on the horizon. If you do find one sitting around in a lot, you might be able to actually get a discount on it. I've heard some people getting discounts, like commenter a few months back, so they got theirs for, I think, a couple grand off. Other people I have heard say they're still trying to get $5,000 over for them. So it's really all over the place with that, and maybe they're really hard to find. I'm not sure, but hopefully with the refresh, they'll start churning them out more if they aren't producing them very quickly right now. But hopefully you can actually get one for that price. If not, if you're paying, more money for an Elantra N, then, that's where the value starts to come into question. But anyway, MDKN says, happy late birthday, Matt. I see everyone else saying happy birthday as well. Thank you all so much. I appreciate that. I've joined the 33 club. I know many of you also, we're chatting in the past live streams about being, in our early 30s. So I'm 33 now, like many of you, and happy for another year here. So, Chandra Chris says, so Matt is now 14. No, I know some people have said I look young, although I feel like I've kind of caught up to my age a little bit in the past few years. But Raphael says, I agree. I'd pick the TLX over the Integra if it had a manual option, but I really like both cars. Yeah, it's, and I do need to spend another week with a TLX, because I think, one of the things is the 10-speed auto kind of let me down a little bit in that car. And I'd love to see if they did any revisions software wise, in the past year or two here that might have made it a little bit better. So It's a tough choice. They're great products for, kind of different buyers, but it's great that Acura is bringing the heat here with some awesome products. Um, and Spy Harper says, "Hope you had an awesome one too, as far as birthday. It was a great day yesterday. Thanks for asking. It was a lot of fun." And so says, "Happy birthday. I'll never forget it now since it's our anniversary." Yeah, it'll be easy to remember for sure. That's funny. And so Jill says, "Happy late birthday. Keep up the amazing and informative work." Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate it, and I'm glad it's been helpful to so many of you. And Bryce says, "Have you done a review on the Nissan Aria?" I had one several weeks ago. I've filmed it, but I have not posted it yet. So that one I kind of put on the back burner because there doesn't seem to be a ton of demand for the Aria. And so and especially electric vehicles on this channel, I'm not usually rushing to get them out because they usually don't do very well. So I have a lot of more exciting stuff coming. And so that kind of got put on the back burner. So I am actually, for those of you who remember, I'm going to be posting a new revised schedule here because I had a fun vehicle pop up, and I will not spoil it since I want to keep that as a member exclusive thing. But I had a fun vehicle pop up. Stay tuned. I'll be doing a member post tomorrow with the updated schedule. But I will say that a car that many of you have been requesting me to review for years, that I've been struggling to get my hands on for years, I finally had a chance to review this week. And so it'll be fun. I'll be posting that one here, not this Monday, but next Monday. And so stuff like that has kind of bumped the Aria further back into the schedule, just because there's more fun stuff I want to post up first. So Aria is coming eventually. It was the all-wheel drive version. And it was interesting. Yeah, I have lots to say about the Aria in my review. So stay tuned, though. It is coming, and it shouldn't be too much longer of a wait. And let me see here. So Raphael says, "I remember turning 33. I think it was just before the continent split apart." Good one. That's a good one. Challenger Chris says, "I don't even remember 33 or 35 or 40. Hopefully that means it was a good blur. It was all just a wild, crazy, fun time." Ace of Spades says 3000 GT VR4 would be my guess. That is not what it is. There is one that I have had offered to me for many years. I just haven't been able to make the trip to review it, but that is one I'm hoping to review at some point. But I do have one of those on the wait list that I definitely want to get to at some point. And Eric says, "Cross shopping after test driving GV70. Advice on what to check out. RAV4 Prime, RDX, Maki, even down to CX5 in consideration. Any thoughts?" So I can kind of drill down more with you if you want to send me a Facebook message, and I can kind of get more context on what you like, because it's really hard to do a blanket suggestion without knowing exactly what your goals are, what you like in a car, and all those types of things. Just very vague advice is GV70 is one of the best ones in the compact luxury segment. And so RDX is close as long as you don't care about the luxury factor, because I think GV70 just completely annihilates RDX as far as luxury goes, but RDX is a little more spacious. And RAV4 Prime, Maki are all very different as far as driving experiences. So that's going to come down to, again, do you want a kind of electrified component? What is your charging situation? If you were to go on the electric side or the plug-in hybrid side, there's just a lot of things to consider there. So please send me a Facebook message. I'll be more than happy to go back and forth with you and really help you to narrow your list down and, be as much help as I can be. So definitely send a Facebook message if you can. Factor X, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, "Hey, Matt, I love your vids. Been watching since your 2013 BRZ. I want to upgrade from my 20 R spec, thinking of a 23 WX or 23 SI. Just want your opinion." Well, thank you so much again for the super chat and for watching the channel that long. That's always very humbling to hear. Between those two, I guess it'll come down to, I'm guessing you're looking at like a base WRX if you're talking about the same price range as an SI, because even with the WRX base, you're going to be spending a couple grand more than an SI. But if money isn't too much of a concern and both are equally affordable, I'll just say that the SI feels a lot more polished. The SI has a better shifter. The driver inputs are much better. The engine doesn't feel as rough. I don't know if it was just the WRX that I had as a press vehicle or what, but I mean, the motor was like idling roughly. Maybe it just didn't have the best tank of gas or something, but that plus the shifter, it has a little bit of rev hang. It's really, really minor, but to me, the SI is better. How not only does the SI have a lighter flywheel for this new generation, but it's also got the auto rev matching, which you don't have in the WRX. And maybe some people like doing that themselves. But to me, having the SI do the rev matching for me, I actually preferred, which again might be hearsay to some people, but just everything felt like it was more polished than the SI. And the WRX, it's just kind of rough around the edges, which some people don't mind. And the WRX is still a great car. I just had one of my good friends in the past week here bought a 2023 WRX and is really happy with it so far. So nothing against them. And the fact that Subaru dealers are discounting them too, like my buddy got a couple grand off of his. I've heard a lot of people are getting discounts at Subaru dealers for the WRX. So, if that comes into play as well, then that could also make it a lot more intriguing of an option. And you get more power, you get the all-wheel drive, depending on where you live. I don't know if all-wheel drive is going to be an improvement for you in your daily commute compared to the front-wheel drive SI. There's a lot of things there. Again, it comes down to what your individual needs are, like I was saying before. But I would lean, if you don't need the absolute most power or all-wheel drive, between those two, I personally would go with an SI. But again, there's nothing wrong with the WRX either. Just to me, the SI does things a little bit better. Hopefully that helps you. But again, WRX is great for those that need, that extra capability or the extra power or, whatever else it is about the WRX that appeals to people. It's still a really great option. I'm so thankful it exists and that it's out there and that it's actually one of the few performance vehicles you can get for a decent deal these days, which is, something that certainly needs to be applauded. So can't really go wrong either way, but those are my thoughts there. Tom, thank you so much for the super chat as well. He says, hey, Matt, what are your thoughts on the ND2 Miata Sport? Have you ever driven one? Is it still fun without the LSD or is it a must-have option? I've actually never driven one without the LSD. All the ones I've driven have been mid to high. They've all been clubs or Grand Tourings. So I don't know what the Sport is like without the LSD. But what I can say is that, yes, it's got more power with the ND2, but we're still only talking about like 181 horsepower or something. It's, that's not like a power level where you desperately need a limited slip diff. You may, if you're really getting on it, coming out of some corners, you might, have a little bit less polish there. But in certain cars, if it's set up well, I don't think not having a limited slip diff is the end of the world. And I think also with those Miatas, they now have their kinematics control, whatever Mazda calls essentially torque vectoring. And I think the base ones have that as well. So you probably will have a little bit of the inside rear wheel braking itself to kind of help it to tuck in a little bit and probably manage the power delivery a little bit as well, even without the limited slip. Obviously, limited slip's always the better way to go if you can spring the extra few $1,000 for it. But if not, I don't think it's going to be a big of an issue. Because I actually, whenever I drove the base Jaguar F-Type several years ago, that also doesn't have a limited slip diff. And that's, 340 horsepower, I think, in that with a supercharged V6. And I was like, oh boy, this thing's going to be a handful. And it kind of was, but not, it was just a handful because of the way Jag sets up their back end. So they just are super tail happy, but it actually wasn't doing, one wheel burnouts or being a sloppy mess. Electronics in modern cars really help to mitigate the loss of a limited slip diff in a lot of instances. So I don't think it's the end of the world. If you must go for a sport trim, if that's the only one that hits your price point, or it's, what you're looking at for whatever reason, test drive it, of course, see for yourself if you can. But I feel like a Miata is a car you could live without the limited slip, especially if you're not doing autocrossing or tracking. If it's just a fun vehicle, I think you should be okay without the limited slip diff. But I've not driven it, so I can't say 100%. Thank you so much once again for the super chat, and hopefully that helps you a little bit there. And I don't want to miss any of the other member questions here. Let me see. So MDKN says he's thinking Evo 9 or Evo 10 or Evo 9. As far as he's considering there. Evo 10, Evo 9 are great. They're just very old from a technology standpoint, from a safety standpoint. And that motor's also not super reliable in the Evos either. I've known plenty of people with Evos that had all kinds of motor issues. Admittedly, a lot of them were because they were modded, but very few Evos are stock these days. So you're going to have to deal with some level of mods probably if you're buying one. But they're fun, amazing cars though, and nonetheless. And Sean says, "Hi Matt, Mercedes is moving to NACS. Thoughts?" Yeah, I just saw that right as I was editing the weekly update and wasn't able to include it in last week's video. And I mean, my thoughts are it's inevitable. Everyone's going to do it. So in my mind, I've already come to terms with the idea that everyone's going to switch this year. As far as or make the announcement this year, they'll switch, in 2025. And that's also interesting because, Mercedes has said that. I didn't see the full release as far as what they're doing, because they also have committed to doing billions of dollars in charging infrastructure with like Mercedes branded charging stations that are going to have like huge awnings and be like a whole big like oasis. I can't remember what they're calling them, but they were planning that. I don't think they've started building those yet, but now I'm curious, if those are all going to be NACS or if they're going to do the dual charger thing like Electrify America and EVgo are planning with having that and CCS, on the same thing or what. But that's the other interesting component for Mercedes, since they are planning to build actual charging stations too. So, yeah, I think it's inevitable now, and I don't know enough about the NACS standard yet to say as far as whether this is a good move that everyone's switching to it or not. But at least everyone's finally getting on board and all going to be on the same thing, and then we can deal with the technical limitations of NACS or whatever, and hopefully be able to get it up to the higher charging speeds that the Hyundais and the Porsches and stuff can do. But yeah, it's good to see it, finally a consensus, I guess, as far as the chargers here. And I feel bad for those Nissan Leaf owners, because no one's talking about the Chatamo plugs, which are like the Leaf. I think it's the Leaf is the last one, maybe the only one now on the market that has the Chatamo plug. So those ones that's what's really going to plummet in value, because I guess they'll maybe have adapters for CCS or the NACS. I don't know if you can do an adapter for the Chatamo or not. I hope so, because otherwise this Leaf, whenever they start swapping out these charging stations, a lot of them right now do have CCS and Chatamo. And so if you're tossing out the Chatamo and doing CCS and NACS, then, hopefully those Leaf owners will have some adapters so they can keep charging their Leafs publicly very slowly, but still they need to charge too. So we'll see what happens with that. Truck Car Guy says, LOL, so who's going to be the next manufacturer to cave to Elon? Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think everyone is eventually. Wild Frame says, is GR86 really too loud and stiff for daily / long distance driving? Long distance, like 200 miles. I mean, that'll come down to your personal tolerance as far as, what you're used to, what you're willing to put up with for the driving experience of the GR86. I don't think it's too loud. I think, the problem is, so especially with my videos, a lot of the roads around here, they do this thing. I don't know if they do it other places where you guys live, where they do this thing called tar and chipping the roads, where like the road is completely, totally fine. And maybe there's like one crack in it or something. And they decide to completely shred the whole road. And instead of repaving it, they dump this tar and what's essentially gravel mixture. It's basically gravel that's solidified in this stuff, and they like call it good for several years. And that stuff is so rough and so loud. And I film a lot of my videos on those roads, unfortunately. And so a lot of people are like, wow, sounds like the road noise is really bad. But whenever I'm on other parts of roads and stuff, it does show that these vehicles are actually pretty quiet. And GR86 is one of those where it might have sounded really loud on that road, but in reality, they're really not that bad. I don't think they're really that much noisier than anything else that's that size in that way, which aren't very many things these days. But Miatas are just as noisy, and anything else that's smaller like that Civic SI, I think they're all very comparable as far as noise goes. As far as the stiff thing, I don't think they're really too stiff either. Again, that'll come down to the roads you're on, and again your tolerance level there. But I don't know. I don't think. I mean, with my BRZ, which I would say was probably less comfortable and louder, especially with the exhaust I had on it. I mean, I was willing to drive that thing all over the place. I drove it 7.5 hours straight from Pittsburgh to Virginia Beach. And I mean, my ears were ringing the entire time I was like the rest of the night. It was crazy. That was with that super loud exhaust I had on that thing back in the day. But I mean, you can do anything is my bottom line. If it just comes down to how much you're willing to put up with. But I really don't think the GR86 is an uncomfortable car. I don't think it's too loud. I think they're great. So hopefully that helps. And maybe, I don't know if Carlos has joined us here on the live stream, but he owns one. He can maybe give some better insight here. If Carlos does join in the chat here, definitely we'll bring that question up to him and he can give us some even better advice since he owns one. And Double Strike Photo says, hey, Matt, happy Sunday. I'm curious who you and others trust when mounting tires on high-priced wheels. So now I have the good fortune of having a friend who's a mechanic that has a shop that they mount everything, for me. I haven't had to mount tires in years. The last time actually was when I got a flat in the bullet for the second time. And that one I actually just took to, it's a local place around here in Pittsburgh that I believe it was, I don't even remember the name. I think it was Kelly Tires, but I mean, your experience is going to vary wildly. I think most tire places, they don't want to like mess up your wheels and they don't want to deal with the crap and the fallout if they do mess up your wheels. So I would just call and say, hey, look, I have these super expensive wheels. They're super, big, and I have a super low profile tire. It's a pain in the butt to mount. Can you do it well? And usually if someone can't do that well, they're just going to dodge that bullet completely and be like, no, go somewhere else. Don't talk to us. Bye. So I would just be upfront and make it sound as difficult as possible. And the shop that takes on the challenge and knows that you're uptight about it and you obviously don't want your wheels to be wrecked, chances are if they're willing to take that risk, then they're probably, up to the task. It's the best advice I can give. Google reviews, stuff like that could maybe help you out a little bit as well. And if there's an enthusiast community, you can, ask on, a Facebook group for your area or, something like that. A forum can maybe help you with giving you some advice. That's the best thing I can say. But I wish I had a better suggestion for you, but it's really seems like it's all over the place. And sometimes, even good technicians just mess up too. So it's always kind of a gamble, unfortunately, especially when you're talking about those more challenging wheels and tires. CK says, did you read how Lucid is planning on making a Model 3 and Model Y competitor after they release their SUV, supposedly around 50 grand? I'm skeptical, but also extremely interested. I actually hadn't heard that. I kind of thought Lucid was going to stay a little more high end. So I will have to check that out and talk about that in next week's update. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. I had no clue. That's great news. I'm all for any car company making more affordable vehicles so that, more people can afford their products. So that's very interesting. We'll see how soon it comes. It's taken Lucid how many years to just do a sedan, and the SUV is still at least a year away or something. So it'll be a while, I'm sure. We'll see, how it all plays out for them, but it's a great goal to have. Hopefully it's something they can actually achieve. But thanks for giving me the heads up on that one. Challenger Chris says they need to have a charging standard though. It was starting to remind me of the long distance phone plan wars of the 80s, not an Elon diehard, but they have shown a solid direction. That's Tesla I think what may end up, we'll see how history plays out, but that may end up also being the number one thing for Tesla that they did right all these years. Obviously the car impact is notable as well, but just, from the very beginning being we're doing our own charging platform. We're doing this new charging setup. It's proprietary. It gives us this huge advantage. And it was, just really a visionary thing to be the brave person, 7-8 years ago to start putting up charging stations at great expense. That took guts for sure. So we will see how it plays out. For me, it was kind of reminding me of the Blu-ray versus HD DVD debate about okay, both these things do the same thing, which one's going to win? And that's, it was kind of the same kind of thing. Wild Frame says, I was also considering an ND2 Miata 1. Savage Geese has a great series of Miatas, including history, engineering insides, etc. Very nice. Yeah, Savage Geese did a great video on the Miatas. So anyone considering one or considering any vehicle, they do such a good deep dive on anything that my videos, I'm always focused on the normal casual daily driving stuff. But if you really want all the details, Savage Geese is definitely going to be your best source of information for all the stuff on understanding a car and appreciating it and what it can do and all the ins and outs of it for sure. So great idea there, Wild Frames. MDKN says, I'm not giving up my Kona N. I'm far too attached to it. I was guessing the mystery car. Gotcha. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood that one. Tom says, also you can change the tires. I used to have the OEM Goodyears on my Focus ST and it was loud. I switched to the Bernstein, a hybrid track, ultra high performance all seasons, and it was noticeably quieter. That is true. Yeah, if you happen to have complaints on a GR86, although I gotta say the GR86, I don't well, even yeah, because it's Michelin Primacy still on the base one, which we're totally fine and pretty quiet. And then Michelin Pilot Sport 4S on the premiums there is a really solid tire. That's what I have in the Bullet. I think they're nice, quiet tires for the most part. Maybe not the quietest, but I think they're really a nice refined tire for sure. And MD Can says, okay, we're talking about Pilot Sport 4Ss as well, and everyone says they love them here. And yeah, MDKN says the PS4S on the Kona N the grip levels are insanely good considering almost 300 pound-feet of torque that goes through only the front tires. Yeah, PS4Ss are great. And that is one of the things with the Bullet here. It is going to be needing new tires in the next few months because the alignment got kind of screwed up. I'll explain more in my 5-year update here this week, but I will be doing some tires here, and I may be trying out something different, but the PS4S has been really good for these 5 years basically. It's a really good tire. Everything I've tested it on other vehicles as well, it's always been really impressive and just really solid tires. Mod Frame says any car brand, including Lucid, needs to do mass production models in order to survive. Maybe only Ferrari can afford to not make one. Yeah, we'll see. But it's I think a lot of companies these days, they want to just do lower volumes and just do higher profit stuff. And there a lot of companies like Mercedes said they're pivoting away from the lower cost stuff, and they want to just push up market. Mazda's looking to push up market. I mean, they're still kind of keeping one foot in the affordable thing as well, obviously, but it's like this up market push that so many companies are doing. So it's always refreshing to see Lucid saying they're going to come down to lower price stuff, or GM saying, hey, we're going to focus on stuff under $30,000. Those types of things are great to hear. Going the opposite direction of everyone else, just being like, oh yeah, let's just let car prices balloon to infinity and then no one can afford them. It's just like good to see some companies, kind of keeping everything in check. But Luke, thank you so much for the super chat. He says the upcoming Mercedes CLE seems like a comeback of the CLK. Yeah, kind of. And that would have been cool to see the CLK name. That's it. I completely forgot about the CLK name, honestly. But yeah, that would have been way better than CLE, I think. I kind of get, it's like C class coupe and E class coupe, and then you put the L in the middle there and kind of straddles both, I guess. But CLK would have been a way cooler name. I agree. And Michael says, is it true the rotary is coming back? The rotary is already back in the range extender of the MX-30, which is the plug-in hybrid, and all here in the States right now, it's only electric, little Mazda that does like 100 miles of range. And unfortunately, it's not very competitive, at least here in the States. But so they're doing a rotary range extender version of that. It's already, I believe, in production in Japan and possibly in Europe as well. I think some European outlets already did a review on it. It's a thing. It is happening. I believe Mazda said they're bringing it here eventually, but they've been iffy about some of these new technologies that they like kind of bring it here, kind of don't, like their diesel a few years back, and like the what was it called, the Skyactiv X engine and stuff. So we'll see if we get the rotary here in the States, but it is something that is back in other parts of the world for Mazda, and it's very exciting to see. I see a Wheatman. Sorry, I missed your question. He said, good afternoon, Matt. What are your thoughts on the Genesis GV80 and possible mid-cycle refresh for 2024? I haven't heard anything about a refresh aside from, we've seen the concept for the coupe version. GV80, though, I love it. I did a review on one a few years back. It was the rear-wheel drive 2.5 version, admittedly, but it was great. It was a really nice car, still super comfortable, insanely luxurious for the money. I still think in that segment, if you want the most comfortable vehicle and like just the best luxury, the luxury car value, hands down to me is GV80 still. It's better. It's more comfortable than the German competitors, I think. And it's more plush. There's more soft padding everywhere. It's just more solid feeling than a lot of them even. I mean, it's just incredible what they did with the GV80. I love it to death. And if that review did better, I would have reviewed the other variants, but like no one watched my GV80 review. So I was like, all right, I'm never covering that car again. But I love it. I think it's a great vehicle. So I still think it's well worth considering if you're shopping in that segment. It's fantastic. And Mike says, do you think Genesis will still be all electric by 2025? Doesn't it seem premature? We will see. Like we saw, I don't know if you saw, in the past week or so here, Volkswagen has said they might be slowing down their EV transition because they're starting to see some cooling off in the market. Some of the Chinese companies, I think, are starting to see some oversaturation as well. So it seems like just in the past week or two, some companies are kind of hitting the brakes a little bit and being like, wait a minute, like maybe we need to keep doing the gas side a little bit longer. And this is the stuff that I've been like banging the table about for, over a couple of years now, where, you're hearing these goals about 2035, 2030, 2025, whatever the case is. Those are goals. Goals are great and admirable and whatever, but no one knows what the future holds. No one knows, whether things will improve one direction or the other direction with technology, or with, events in the world. There's so many things. And so it's so hard to say, if any of these companies are going to hit these targets. And it also could just be complete BS. They could just be, marketing lines they're putting out there to make themselves look good. And then, they don't have any real intentions of hitting those goals. And then 2025, 2030, 2035, whatever comes around, and they kind of assume that, yeah, things aren't going to go as smoothly as everyone's hoping. And they're like, oh, sorry, we couldn't hit it. It would have been great, but now we're pushing it back. But maybe they never were actually going to get that goal no matter what anyway, So we will see. And I still, think that, in my opinion, the best approach is what Toyota is doing, which is tons of hybrids, plug-in hybrids that are actually good and have enough range to do your full commute in from most of Americans. And then you have the electric stuff for people that, that fits into their life and what they want. I think that works for everyone. Then that way, everyone can still drive a hybrid 1,000 miles a day if they want to, and there's no limitations there, and it works. It works for everyone. And I mean, there's been more and more people. This is starting to gain momentum, and I've been seeing. I think The Drive did an article this past week arguing the same thing that Toyota's been shouting from the rooftops for years and getting a ton of crap for, and I've been saying for a while as well. I think that it makes more sense to just, especially the limited amount of batteries we have, and that situation. I think it's better to do smaller batteries, enough to cover everyone's range, and for like a daily commute, and that's it, and churn out way more of those. And I said this in my Prius Prime review. You can build 8 Prius Primes or 7 Prius Primes with the same battery materials as like one BZ4X, and it's like, you're realistically, again, because no one will admit that they don't drive 1,000 miles a day. Everyone's, oh, I got to make sure I can go to South America and back in the same day if I need to. So like, if you give people that capability with the gas thing, and then realistically, they're still actually basically driving an EV every day with a Prius Prime and having their 44 miles of electric range, and they never even need the gas engine. But it's nice to have that crutch there for them in case they decide they need to drive more. But I think it's I still think the RAV4 Prime, if they could actually build them as fast as regular RAV4s, that car single-handedly could change the world and could bring down emissions enormously on its own. And it's the second most popular vehicle in America right now. If they could build 400,000 of them a year like they do to the regular RAV4s, that's all you need. You just need the RAV4 Prime, and that would be the one car that could actually improve all the emission stuff drastically, in my opinion. But anyway, long tangent there, but I think that might be premature with 2025 for Genesis, but we will see how they choose to run their company. And Jay says, hey Matt, just got in now. How are you and the family doing? We're doing great, having a great weekend, and hope you're doing well as well, Jay. Wild Frame says, everything all electric seems premature at this point. I think government's forced it too much. The infrastructure in most parts of the world is not ready. So as Matt says, they will adjust it a bit. Yeah, everything again is just goals. So yeah, we'll see what happens. And Yadvinder says, Toyota just stated that they're going to slow down on EV production, trying to focus on hybrids. Yeah, and totally agree with them. Ace of Spades says, did see a rumor and lean of the ND3 Miata refresh in yellow and body panel update, as well as rumored any hybrid Miata powertrain. Interesting. I didn't hear about that, but it's due for something new here pretty soon. So hopefully we get a nice improvement from the Miata. We'll see, but I think ND2, as I said in my review a couple of years ago, is pretty close to enthusiast perfection, in my opinion. It's just so good. So I hope they don't mess it up with ND3 or some type of NE. Fingers crossed. And Challenger Chris says, have you ever looked into those non-pneumatic tires? Not sure. I'm totally sold. Yeah, I think, what was it? They said they were just testing them. So I think, was it Michelin or Goodyear? Someone was testing them recently and putting them on delivery vehicles or something. It's a nice idea. We will see how that plays out. I mean, it'd be great, from a flat tire standpoint, if no one ever gets a flat tire again. But there's a lot of cool stuff happening in tire technology right now. So hopefully that's something that does come to reality someday, but seems like it might have some limits to the technology as of right now. Jason says, hi, Matt, between the new Tacoma and the new Ranger, what do you think? Haven't driven either of them, so it's really hard for me to say between the two. I would say, I haven't even sat in the new Ranger, so I don't even know. I haven't seen one in person, but from, the pictures we've all seen online and stuff, I think Ranger's really nice, and the Raptor version is certainly going to have some, one-ups over the, most off-road versions of the Tacoma. So there's a place for the Ranger. But I don't know. I think the Tacoma is really going to be impressive too. And yeah, I'm just going to have to wait to drive both of them to really say, to be totally honest. Unfortunately, with the Ranger, it might be a long wait since Ford's always weird with me. So it'll probably be a long time before I review one, but I'm hoping to review one eventually and have a good answer for you in the not too distant future, hopefully. But they both seem really promising. It's great to see all these new trucks coming all of a sudden. Kyle said, I'd love a removable battery I can take out and charge in my house. It'd be more on board for EVs since I live in apartments and no charging stations at home. Yeah, that's gonna be a long time, I'm sure, before there's batteries that are removable to the point where you can bring them into your house. But that'd be fun tech someday. We'll see how much battery tech advances. But with all the money being poured into battery tech, anything's possible. Because I mean, even Toyota just said by 2026 they're expecting to have a battery that has 620 some miles of range, which is crazy. So at that point, you can start downsizing the batteries finally, and maybe someday we'll get to them being to a point where you can have them removable and a little bit easier. We'll see. And Jay says, would you consider trading in your Mustang Mach-E for a RAV4 Prime? It was one of the strong contenders whenever we were shopping for the Mach-E. And if we needed something, like if we needed that flexibility of having the gas backup, if we did long trips all the time and stuff, RAV4 Prime probably would have been, one of the ones we'd get. I think Beth doesn't love the RAV4 styling. She thinks it's a little too rugged and off-roady looking, especially on the inside with the big chunky knobs and stuff. She didn't love that. So she's not super into the RAV4 herself. And the NX, I'm not in love with the packaging of the interior in the NX just because they are so head-up display heavy with the NX, and I'm not a huge fan of head-up displays personally. So the NX, even though that's also a little bit more expensive too, and not sure if it's worth the extra price, as far as what we would want. But so, if they had done like a Venza Prime, that could have maybe been something a little more tempting for us that was a little less rugged looking than the RAV4. But I still, in my mind, yes, if I needed the flexibility and we, wanted to get rid of the Mach-E for whatever reason, RAV4 Prime would be one of my top picks. Again, it's just, but again, with that car, it's a compromise between Beth and I of trying to find something that we both like. So we would have to see, what would end up winning out. But I love the RAV4 Prime. I think it's great. Wild Frames, thank you so much for the super chat. He says 2 cups of coffee for the nice talk. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. And let me see here. Yeah, Jay says, would you also have any estimate on pricing if the Integra Type S did have all-wheel drive? I keep thinking 62 to 65 over the front-wheel drive we have in the market now. Well, I don't know if it'd be that. I mean, that's a big upcharge. You're talking 10 to 13 grand more for all-wheel drive. I think if that hypothetical car did happen, I would say you'd have to price in what the difference is between an all-wheel drive TLX and a front-wheel drive TLX, which I believe is only $1,500 or so for an upcharge. I think the problem why you'll never see an Integra Type S is because I don't think that platform is set up for all-wheel drive. And, even the 10-speed auto, even though we know that does pair up with that 2-liter motor, like I did in the Accord and the TLX and stuff, I don't know if that, the platform of the Civic and the smaller, dimensions of it in the Integra would even fit the 10-speed, because I know some people are still holding out hope for a 10-speed version. I don't think that would fit, and I just don't think the all-wheel drive system would fit, especially not the super handling all-wheel drive that's Honda and Acura would want to put in that vehicle, with the true torque vectoring rear diff and all that stuff. All that takes space, and I just don't think there's room in that platform for it. I could be wrong. I don't, I'm not an engineer. I don't know the ins and outs of that platform, but that makes me think that's just never going to happen. But if it did, I would assume it'd be the same price premium as any other front wheel drive to all wheel drive Acura hop, in my opinion. And Vinzer says, is there any car you thought would have been a great hit in the market, but turned out to be a flop? I mean, there's a bunch of cars, where I have said, this is a really underappreciated car and a car that should have done better than it did. I think, like I really love the CT4 and the CT5V, the regular Vs, not even the Blackwings. The Blackwings, have their cult followings and, are, I'd say, reasonable hits, but even those I think are a little underappreciated because you still have people going out and buying M5s and M3s when, in my opinion, I'd much rather have the Cadillacs. But I think the regular CT4, like I said at the end of my Integra review, it's like you get an extra 70 pound-feet of torque in the CT4V. You get that all-wheel drive that everyone wants in the Integra and can't have. CT4 has it. It still has nice small dimensions, that little bit of like extra refinement there of it being a Cadillac, but it's not quite as polished as maybe a BMW or something, and it's I really love the CT4V, and I know a lot of people were put off, I think, by the fact that the motor is also shared with the Silverado, even though it has very different tuning. It's just people are, oh, I don't want a truck motor, even though everyone's fine with the truck motor in the Mustang and the Challengers and everything. But I digress on that. But I think those are really underappreciated cars. I think the Cadillac CT6 was underappreciated. Lincoln Continental was very underappreciated. As Goth Rocker will agree, who owns one. I don't know if he's joined us here yet in the live stream or not. But yeah, there's lots of great cars that I thought should have been good hits and weren't. I also think Genesis G80. Why are not more people buying G80s? I think it's, again, a solid value, a really nice alternative to the 5 Series and E-classes that are everywhere that everyone buys. And it's like, the one car that's a little bit unique and just people just aren't here for it for some reason. So there's lots of good stuff, I think, like that. Jay says, I have a 2019 RAV4 LE and would love a RAV4 Prime or TRD off-road personally. Yeah, my sister-in-law just has a RAV4 LE as well, and she just bought her lease out because it was up last year, and she was like, I can't get anything cheaper than this anyway. She's like, I'm just going to buy out my lease like everyone else is doing. And obviously, since it's a RAV4, she could drive it forever. She said she'd like to upgrade to a regular hybrid at some point, but again, with the market being what it is and the interest rates and stuff being crap, I think she's just sitting it out, as I would recommend anyone do right now until interest rates get better, or if you can get a good interest rate, fine. But right now, it's just not a good time to buy new cars, unfortunately. Jay says, I just attended the Modest Car Show at River Center in St. Paul here, and R35s are still my top priority. Just wish the market got them back down to 50s or 60s with decent mileage. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's one of those cars, kind of like the NSX, where like they kind of dropped off a little bit, and then they're just going to start rebounding and just never go any further. I was hoping R35s would get affordable someday too, and then they kind of never really, because, before the Mustangs and stuff, even we're talking like early 2010s, I was like hopeful, like maybe I could afford one someday, and it's just, they never got cheap enough. But I'd love an R35 someday too. And the 1KS says, good afternoon, Matt. How has the heat and humidity affected the performance of your Maki? If you haven't talked about it yet, what are your thoughts on Ford's adoption of the NACS chargers? So Maki loves the hot weather. That's where we get the highest range ratings. And it's really impressive. The humidity doesn't seem to affect it at all. But I mean, yeah, like in the winter, the lowest we saw was like, we only charge it. We keep it at 90% just to maintain the battery health, unless we're going on a long road trip. But at that 90%, like in the wintertime, it got as low as like, I think 120 or 125 miles of range on our 225 or 222 mile rated battery, with, again, its max range, but again, 90%. Regardless, got down to like 125, but now it's telling us like 201 to 205 miles of range on a 90% charge here. And that's like basically the highest we've ever seen. And so it's going to come down to, again, driving and all that. But it has no problem with the heat or anything. And Kyle, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships there. So great to see everyone able to snatch those up. And thank you so much, Kyle, for the generosity. I really appreciate it. And Omar says, is the RAV4 Prime comparable to the Wrangler 4xe? kind of in the idea that it has this mass appeal. And I don't know about you guys, and I think it's partially a geographical thing because of the way Jeep is doing allocations right now, but I'm seeing regular 4xe everywhere now. And it is actually, I believe, the number one selling plug-in hybrid in America currently, which also is kind of crazy because they are expensive, more expensive than RAV4 Prime, but people are buying the 4xe. And I think in PA and many other of the carb states of California, emission stuff, they're only shipping 4xe and telling dealers it's only order only for gas Wranglers now, which is wild. That Stellantis is stepping it up this fast and this early, but I think they just desperately want to save themselves with all those incoming fines and fees that they're going to be slapped with for having horrible fleet fuel economy. So they're pumping out the Wrangler 4xe, but they're not really comparable. It's totally different amounts of power, driving experience, capabilities, refinements. They're comparable in the fact that they both have electric range and gas engines, but that's about it. I mean, the RAV4 Prime's got like double the range, I think, of the Wrangler. I think Wrangler's like 25 miles on a good day or something like that versus 42 for the RAV4 Prime. So it's not super comparable. But Double Strike Photo says another data point for high heat, our EVs are loving it, hitting almost 280 miles in range mode. That's awesome. And they have the Audi e-tron, or maybe you're talking about your Taycan. I'm not sure which one you're referring to there, but great that you're getting good range there. And Jay said, before COVID, I found a few for 50 grand, but not anytime soon. By the way, did you guys lease the Maki, or are you buying the lease out like you mentioned with the RAV4? So the Maki, the Ford is cool how they do something called the Ford Options Plan, where it's a purchase, technically. It's a balloon payment purchase, so that you're able to get the tax credit like as if you bought it, but it's still structured like a lease so that you can dump it back to Ford if you don't want to keep it, or there's an agreed upon balloon payment that you can pay or finance, obviously, to buy that out and then just keep owning the vehicle. So it gives you the best of both worlds. And I don't know why every other car company didn't copy that, because now every other company, it's like, okay, we have to buy it. And if you lease it, then they discount the lease, but then you don't actually get the money off. You just get lower payments, which it might be preferable to some people, but a lot of people, if you're eligible for that tax credit, you just want that $7,500, right off the top there. So, we just did the Ford Options Plan. We did the 4-year Ford options too. We stretched it out a little bit there because we're really excited about the car. We're really happy with it. And so that way we don't have to rush, and give it an extra year there versus the 3-year thing. So 4 years. So we will decide in 2026 whether we keep it or get rid of it. We may get rid of it earlier because, since it is that option thing, we can still sell it and get rid of it. It's not, we're not locked into it like a lease, thankfully. So, we will see if Beth decides she wants something else, but she's really happy with it. I have no reason to want to get rid of it. And so, we'll probably keep it, I'm guessing the entire time, unless it lets us down or has some major failure or something. Otherwise, we'll be keeping it around. And Goth Rocker says, yes, love my Lincoln Continental. Washed her last night. Sleek, large, comfy, really well put together car with all-wheel drive, full glass roof, so smooth and smooth power. That should have been a hit. Yep. Glad you're here to say that, Goth Rocker, and thanks for joining us here. Yeah, I still love the Continentals. I'd still love to do a review on one someday. Maybe we'll be able to meet up sometime and do that. Even though, again, it wasn't a popular car, probably wouldn't get any views, but it'd be still a fun one personally for me to review because I still just love the Continentals. I think they did a great job on them. Kyle said, I tried 3 times on my computer but failed. I had to use my phone instead. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks, Kyle, for your persistence there. I don't know why the membership thing is weird. Especially YouTube desperately wants that people to do that stuff because it makes it easier on YouTube, because then they don't have to sell as many ads. They've been really pushing YouTubers to try and do memberships and super chats and all these types of things to supplement income, because the ad thing is getting more and more competitive every day. And so it's kind of funny that YouTube makes it so hard for people to do the super chats and the memberships, considering how much YouTube is like really hoping that takes off for them. But thank you so much once again, Kyle. I really appreciate it. A Sylvia said, hey, Matt, you spoke about dream cars recently. Mine is still the original DeLorean. Even though I know it had a terrible motor, I still love it. What was it like driving the replica time machine? Great question. It was so much fun. That is still, as you saw, I immediately got a smile when you said that. I mean, that is one of the most fun cars I ever reviewed. I mean, not because it's amazing driving or anything like that. It's, wasn't anything special from a driving standpoint, but just the sheer joy it brought to everyone. I mean, that car everywhere got so much attention, obviously being the Time Machine replica, but just it brings so much joy to other people, and it's a different kind of joy too, because you could argue, and I've had some friends in the past that owned exotic cars that, oh, I bring joy to so many people, and that is certainly true in many cases. You have an exotic, you show it off to people, and it brings them a joy. But there's also like the other side of that coin with an exotic car, where it's like a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth about either exotic cars or rich people or both or whatever, whereas there's none of that bad vibe with any kind of movie car replica like that. It always is like, the owner doesn't come into the picture. No one cares who owns it. No one pays any attention to the owner. It's about the car, and everyone, it's just a likable, happy, fun, pure thing with movie cars like that. And the Time Machine just was so fun, just to brighten everyone's day. And I mean, it was an adventure. I mean, visibility is not great. It's obviously I had to be very careful with it. It was one of the more nerve-wracking cars I drove, because even I've had an NSX for a week. I've driven Rolls Royces and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all that stuff, and those are certainly obviously nerve-wracking as well. But with those, you can send them to a body shop and mostly get it back to normal, after a few weeks of work. But not something like that, where it's a labor of love and it took forever to do that and find a good one and get all the parts, which are not easy to get. And, so that was one of those cars where like, it's hard to see out of. I had to be careful because everyone else was really excited that was driving around me trying to take pictures, which means their driving isn't great. And there's a little bit of that, anxiety about it, but it was still such an amazing experience. It was so, so cool. And, yeah, that's what's one of my reviews that I thought would actually do really well and just didn't really get very many views, but that's okay because it was just so much fun and something that's going to be one of the highlights, I think, of my career. When I look back, whenever I quit doing this, whether that's at the end of my life or sooner, it's, going to be like, I got to drive a Back to the Future time machine doing this. And, with all the stuff, there's, lots of behind the scenes stuff that's stressful and stuff. But when I look back on it, like things like that are going to make all the stressful stuff worth it. Just the fact that I've had the fortunate opportunity to do that and meet so many amazing people. And so, yeah, love that time machine. That'd be a really fun car to, if I had a ton of money someday, I'd love to have one of those as well, just to take it to, car shows and charity events and just make everyone, insanely excited. It's just such an awesome car. Goth Rock Girl says, happy birthday, Matt. Mine is on Friday. Well, happy early birthday to you as well. It says, I'm dreading it, 40 years old. Cars should have been a hit, Kia Stinger, but I blame the dealers for that car failing, acted like it was a Ferrari. Yeah, that's what I've heard with many dealers, unfortunately. Good luck on turning 40. I'm sure it'll be great. Age is just a number, right? It's only how you feel. So don't let it get to you. Hopefully it'll be all good. Jay says, wow, that balloon deal is very intriguing. I've never heard of it. If only other automakers had that extended route choice for customers, I'd love to do that payment towards Hondas or Toyotas. Yeah, it's a great thing. And I'm not sure. I don't know why other companies didn't do it. I know there's a few states that don't allow balloon payment finance things with cars, just because I believe, it can get out of hand if you don't have it set up well. There's some very scammy balloon payment finance things out there, but it's actually through Ford Credit. It's a legit thing. And it's, just they did it because that's the only way you could get the tax credit without having to, buy the vehicle technically, so that's, yeah, it's just, I think it was really smart. Yeah, so Jay says, thanks for sharing that with us. Happy to help. Yeah. Raphael says, let's all work together to convince Beth to trade the Maki for an e-tron GT. Yes, that would be fun. Beth loves the Taycan. If we had the money, I mean, she would happily drive one of those. But yeah, that is way out of our price range. And unless I get to Doug DeMuro levels of video views, I don't think we'll ever be in anything that expensive. And Goth Rocker says, yeah, ever want to review it? Let me know. Just hit me up. I'm in Northeast PA. Probably won't do well on the channel, but yeah, I would definitely love it. I love classic cruisers like that. So thank you so much for the offer. And Northeast PA, I don't get up to too often, but I do actually have some extended like in-law family in that direction. So not out of the question. So I'm not sure if you ever sent me an email, Goth Rocker, but if you can, that's an easier way for me to be able to just email people and send them a message once I know I'm going to a certain area, and then I could hit you up and maybe we could actually make that happen. So if you don't mind sending me an email to the Matt Maran Motoring Gmail address there, that would be great. And maybe we can figure something out here someday. Thank you again for the offer. And Jay says, found myself watching your old videos with the 2014 GTR, 2016 Nismo GTR, and 09 GTR and Evo 10. Hopefully I can test drive them sometime soon in the future. Yeah, hopefully you can. They're incredible vehicles, especially that Nismo was, whew, that thing was wild. So much fun. Double Strike Photo says, didn't realize it was your birthday. Happy birthday, man. Now you are in the same age bracket of people who finally can get some of the cars we wanted in our 20s. Yep. Yeah, turned 33 yesterday. Thank you again. Yeah, we'll see. I got my dream car there with the Bullet. I'm happy, but it'd be fun to always add to the collection someday. I see Lewis also says happy birthday. Thank you so much, Lewis. Merck7 says, have you driven an M3 Comp X Drive? Hopefully you can review more BMWs. I've never driven this current generation 3 Series, including the M3. So unfortunately, I have no insight on them. BMW won't send me press vehicles or send me on events. And so it's just, I'm at the mercy of the few dealers that I work with, and then anyone who offers cars to me to review from their privately owned, garages. That's the only way I'm able to review BMWs. That's how I got the M2 review done, a few weeks back. Was an owner that offered his, and I was able to meet up with him and do that. So hopefully I'll get to do an M3 at some point because it seems like they're great cars. But haven't had an opportunity yet. Jay says, yes, happy birthday. 10 years difference, but I feel 33 being only 23. Well, that's not great. Hopefully, hopefully things improve for you soon so you don't feel so tired out there. But yeah, it's great to be 23 as well. It was a fun year for me too. David, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, happy birthday. How about approved FAA 2009 car? Yeah. So you're talking about the first flying car or whatever that's being put in production. I didn't read too much into that because I still feel like a lot of that stuff might be vaporware. I mean, it's approved and hopefully they can actually build them. I don't know how many they're actually going to build or how many people are going to buy them. But flying cars as an idea theoretically sounds nice, but then, the reality of that is also terrifying because of just, you have to really be paying attention whenever you're actually off the ground flying something. And I'm not sure that the average driver, is eligible to be trusted with flight. But we'll see, how things transition and if things ever transition into any kind of flying car or somebody in the way off future. But I honestly don't even know if it'll be in my lifetime, to be totally honest. I still think that's a real far off, like David says, Jetsons thing. Yeah, I would love to see it happen. It'd be very cool. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. Two, thanks for joining us here. Says, hey, Matt. Raphael says, people can't even drive in 2 dimensions. Please don't give them 3. That's basically, yes, my same opinion as well. Man, I hope they're all autopilot. Even that's terrifying, though, considering how autopilots fail so badly in Teslas and stuff, too. So even that is not a consolation, really. So, yeah, I think we can leave the cars on the ground for a long time until humanity finally evolves to a more capable points, which may never ever even happen. We'll see. Jay says, I'm actually very surprised looking into what you mentioned in the Integra Type S review you did in the CT4V and not the Blackwing. It really is a good contender. Like you said, it is underrated. Yeah, I think so. And I also think, I didn't even mention this in that video, but another thing with the CT4V, again, no one really cares about them. They're probably sitting around on dealer lots. They're probably not hot sellers. So everyone's sitting there crying about how the Integra Type S can't be bought for MSRP. And I understand most places it can't be. And I know not everyone can sit on a waiting list for years and years and hunt one down and make a million phone calls. I get it. Here you go. I offered a solution in the video. Get a CT4V. You have the all drive everyone wants. You have the extra luxury, like the cooled seats in the moonroof everyone wants. You get even more power, even bigger engine, still fantastic handling. And all that, and you probably can get a discount on it, and maybe even a healthy discount depending on where you're at. So I think CT4V is great, but again, everyone likes something different. I know some people hate the styling and stuff, which I think it's getting a refresh this year, so that might actually get fixed too. But if you don't mind the styling, I think it's a great car. Challenger Chris says, taken out by a crow or pigeon, bad enough having to dodge. Yeah, other animals on the ground. Yeah, all kinds of issues potentially there. Jay says, that's definitely one thing I really love about your channel. Most people overlook those kinds of comparisons. Well, thank you. I'm glad you appreciate that. I know it makes the videos kind of longer and stuff. It's just, I'm a very thorough person that overthinks things a lot. And that might be part of why, again, these videos only appeal to a limited audience and it doesn't have mass appeal. But I think, I think that's helpful. I try and just be really helpful in these videos and offer solutions and offer alternatives and, be open-minded and not just, ride the hype train and be like, this is the greatest car ever, the end. Like I want to say, well, there's this and this and this. And maybe that overcomplicates things for some people who don't need all those extra options and it just makes it harder to choose. But to me, I would rather have all the information out there, give you guys a comprehensive layout of here's all the cards on the table, make of it what you will, and again, everyone likes different things. So it doesn't mean it's the best choice for everyone, but at least you have all the information to make a real informed choice to hopefully get the best possible car to suit what you're looking for, Hey, Sylvia says, happy birthday, Matt. We have to do another Disney trip someday. It's still crazy running into you and Beth wondering, where do I know these people from? Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't realize that was you. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, bumped into you guys at Disneyland there. It was wild in 2016. That's so awesome. Yeah. See, we're hoping to do a Disney trip. We really want to do one so badly with our daughter. It's like Beth's like number one goal right now is to get down to Disney, and mine as well. It'd be amazing. And seeing our daughter's face like just light up with sheer joy at Disney would like actually bring tears to Beth's eyes. So hopefully we can make a new Disney trip happen at some point here. We're thinking maybe next year. We'll see how everything does, see how the channel does, see how, everything goes, and see if Disney, keeps their prices in check. Cause that's also, a tough thing there with how they're just making everything so difficult these days, but hopefully things will improve with that too. And David says, I'm a retired Volkswagen Audi rep, 34 years. I own 2 e-trons. Thank you so much for the super chat, David, and for sharing that. So there you go. David's your guy. If you're needing any info, I know, with double strike photo and having the Audi e-tron and a few others, so anyone has any questions for David there, I'm sure he can give you some great advice there. And thanks for chiming in, David. And feel free also, I'd love to hear your thoughts in my Volkswagen and Audi reviews, either in the past or in the future, any of your thoughts about, what those vehicles are like, from a back end mechanical kind of standpoint. It'd be great to hear your thoughts, having all those years of experience. That's awesome. And thanks for joining in. Luke O says, I really enjoy the longer videos. I drive a semi for a living. I constantly load my playlist up with podcasts and longer videos to keep me entertained. Well, thank you so much again for the super chat, Luke. And I'm glad that the channel is entertaining. I'm sure hopefully these live streams are great too, because it's, 2 hours every week here of me blabbing about whatever. And I'm glad to see that, you enjoy the videos there. And I know someone last week, I don't know if they're in here this week, but someone last week was asking about podcast recommendations. Maybe you can provide some of your own there. Maybe there's some good car ones that you like, because I'm completely out of the loop on podcasts. But anyway, getting back to the other member questions here. So Two's asking, hey, what do you think about car companies licensing their products to other industries because they even announced it? By the way, that new Tacoma Power Wheels, oops, I don't think I was supposed to say that. Tacoma, yeah, there is a Tacoma Power Wheels, I think. I think actually my brother-in-law was talking about that just the other day. But as far as car companies licensing their products to other industries, I mean, I think any of these companies, they would love to do that stuff. Especially, I think we're starting to see, companies trying to recycle the batteries in EVs eventually and using those for other industries and, other places where that kind of thing might, be convenient. Volvo's really good about, trying to recycle things and reuse them and all that. So, I think it's, any way they can make more profit, I'm sure they'll be happy to. Jay says, I'm very thorough as well. I watched until the end, so I'm all in on the thoroughness and informative info you have. Well, thank you. I'm glad that jives with you, and I'm glad you like that. Jay said, or Wildframe says, reviews always need to have comparison parts. You cannot talk for a product in a vacuum. Yeah, it's great comparing it to what. That's very, very true. And that's really something, I think comparison's everything. And it's interesting because I've had discussions, and I won't say who, but I've had discussions with car companies where they don't love comparisons. And obviously, and it's even companies that have solid products where they shouldn't be scared of comparisons, but like they just don't want to share the limelight in my video with another car, if they're providing their vehicle. But it's like, I've always like stuck to my guns, like, look, I got to compare it. Like I'm not reviewing this in a vacuum. I want to put everything out there, and they've always agreed, like, yes, that's understandable, that's fine. But there's a few companies that would rather if I didn't compare. But it's very, very important because you could be a cheerleader for something, but it's all relative, like I said, it's all, like you said, it's in a vacuum, everything's great. And I've said this, there's a lot of vehicles where, in a vacuum, if you're not talking about other competitors, it's a great vehicle, but then you talk about competition and it really lets you down. And it's very important to include that info, in my opinion. Goth Rocker says, I enjoy longer videos as well. More detail and opinion is important, especially when you get to live with a car for a week. These are important reviews. Most only get a test drive or two for 25 minutes. Yeah. And that's really why I try and really, boil down on what this is like to live with, what it's like to drive, and really just try and do the test drive for people and give them all that information as best as I possibly can. And obviously, there's some stuff that is subjective, and just because I like it doesn't mean you will, or vice versa. But I try and be as objective as possible with some of my inputs there, and hopefully it does help many of you. Luco says he enjoys the TFL podcast. They're entertaining. Cool. I love the TFL guys, so that's great to hear. And that's a solid recommendation, I'm sure. Lod Frame says, I agree. I enjoy long format videos and talks for products that I have interest in. I watch car reviews sometimes only for fun to check what's going on. Yeah, and that's kind of the ebb and flow nature of the channel. Is there are a lot of people that they kind of just are served by this channel in the way that I kind of designed it to be. Like, I want it to be really helpful for car shoppers, especially, and also entertaining for those who just love cars, like we all do. But there's a lot of people that just come and go. They just send me a message, say, hey, thanks so much. This really helped me decide on getting this vehicle. And thanks. See you in 5 years when I need a new car. And that's fine. I mean, it's not great from a views standpoint. Obviously, I'd love to see everyone watch everything, but that's the nature of reviewing cars on YouTube, is just being helpful. And if I've done my job well, hopefully, unless again you just are naturally into cars, but if you're just a car shopper, hopefully you only need to watch my channel once every 3 to 5 years, which is a horrible, terrifying thing to say, but that's really the goal here, is to help people actually truly get a car they love. So I'm happy that has helped so many of you. And Jay says, you can't sell something you claim to be a better performer than something else in the market and not mention the value per dollar, like Matt mentioned before in his reviews. Yeah, it's really important, I think, for sure. Joel says, Matt, should I get used 2023 Colorado and Chrysler is 300 coming back as an electric vehicle? Why is the 2024 Toyota 4Runner 2025? Love your videos. Thanks so much, Joel. So a bunch of little questions there. Should you get a 2023 Colorado? I've not driven the new Colorado yet, so I don't know how it is, but I really liked the Canyon, I can say. So you can go watch my Canyon video for some of my thoughts, since it's very similar to the Colorado. Hopefully I'll have a Colorado review at some point later this year. Chrysler 300 as an electric vehicle, we will see what Chrysler does. Right now they're focused on their midsize crossover thing for their first EV, and that's in 2025 or 2026. So Chrysler 300 electric will be sometime after that, so it'll be a long wait for that. As far as 4Runner, we don't know what's coming for the new 4Runner still. It's assumed it'll probably be very similar to the new Tacoma whenever it does arrive, whether that's this year, next year, 5 years from now, who knows? With Toyota, could be any of those options, so we'll see. And I'm so glad you love the channel. Goth Rocker says, Friday is my birthday. I'm off from work, and I'll be watching the weekly update when I post. Hope it's interesting news. Keep the weekly updates going if you can. I really appreciate that. And yeah, once again, happy early birthday, Goth Rocker. And yeah, I'm hoping, I'm always at the mercy of what news comes out that week. It's really tough because my hands are kind of tied there. I can pick the headline, but it's like I only have so many stories that week to pick from. So it makes it tough. Like this past week's weekly update, there wasn't anything super crazy. And that's why the views really suffered compared to, the weeks prior. So it's one of those things that makes it tough. And that's one of the challenges here, the weekly update, and why a lot of other car channels, like no one else really does this for good reason, because it's not a very profitable, good thing to do. But, I know so many of us love it. So that's why I keep them going. But definitely probably isn't the best for the channel. And Jay says, more leaks for a revived S2000 is very intriguing and popping up recently in the Honda enthusiast world right now. We're really looking forward to more news on it. Any thoughts? Hybrid? I haven't heard anything. So I will have to check out the Honda enthusiast, forums and see about that. If you have any links, Jay, I'd love to check them out. If you want to email them or message them to me somehow, you can. But I can also just Google and try and find that. But hadn't heard about any kind of revived S2000 stuff. There was, just the talk about the electric. There's the two electric coupes that Honda has. One's going to be an NSX. The other one's going to be some type of Honda, but it's not going to be convertible. So that's why I didn't think it'd really be a revival of the S2000. But those are the only two sports cars I know of on the horizon from Honda and Acura. But maybe there will be more. We'll see. I'd love to see some type of gas power thing. And I know several years ago, I mean, this is a while ago, so I don't know if things have changed, but I know several years ago, Honda reps told me, like, we'd love to see an S2000 too. No one buys that stuff. They're like, we can't do it for the price everyone wants to pay. Case in point, Integra Type S, or even the Civic Type R. All these things people love, and then everyone gets so mad about the price about these things. S2000, let's just play hypothetical and say, okay, they actually didn't partner up with anyone, so it was entirely funded by themselves, engineered from the ground up as a unique platform, has a unique engine that lives up to the one in the old S2000, two enormous costs, doing a brand new high performance engine, brand new high performance platform. And then, you have to make it perform well. You're going to do a lot of engineering work, a lot of R&D, years of testing. And then, if you can actually get it past the bean counters to get it approved for production, what's the profit margin got to be to pay off all those costs? Is it going to be $30,000 like everyone wants it to be? No. Is it going to be 40? No. Is it going to be 50? No. We'll cut to the chase. It would probably be 75, 80 grand at least would be my guess. And then everyone would say, oh, I don't want it anymore. So, they're just in the catch-22. A lot of these car companies, most of them, I would say, are run by enthusiasts that think just like we do, that have all the same wish list stuff that we have, but they have to answer to the higher ups. They have to answer to the shareholders. They can't just make cars that lose money just for the fun of it, So it's just the business side of it that's really unsexy and just really unfun. That kind of is the cold, wet blanket that's thrown on all these fun ideas. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully there will be some type of S2000 revival someday. But just buckle up; it's not going to be cheap if it ever happens. And if it does happen in a cheap fashion, then there will be compromises, whether it's platform sharing, a partnership with someone you don't like, or some type of phoned-in engine or something like that. Like they take the Type R motor and toss that in or something. It's going to be one or the other. What is the thing? There's you can only have three things. You can either have it be good, cheap, or reliable, cheap, or fast. You can only have two of the three every time. It's one of those types of conundrums. You can never have all three unless it won't be cheap if you have to have something super fast and super solid. Anyway, I see a bunch of other super chats here. So huge thanks, David, for another super chat. He says, Matt, you're my number one. Also, my good friend is Joe Rady. That's awesome. Joe Rady is an amazing guy. So happy to, I'm thankful to call Joe and Lori friends as well. And they are fantastic human beings. And thanks so much for the super chat, David. Noisy Boy, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, Matt, love the channel. I'm planning on buying a 2003 S2000. It has over 200,000 miles. Is it a reasonable price? I don't think you said the price there. Maybe I missed that. I'll try and see a follow-up. They're selling it for 15 grand, you said. I honestly don't know enough about the S2000 market to say. I think it'd be better to ask a forum or a Facebook group, and see what other people think about that listing. As long as you're not worried about people buying it out from under you. But I don't know enough about the market. I'd have to, go on Auto Trader and others and, do some research there and see, and as far as, is it clean Carfax or not? How are the maintenance records? After a visual inspection, does it actually look good? Because the Carfax isn't 100% reliable either all the time. So there's a lot of variables there for me to say whether or not that's a good price. And again, I just don't even know the pricing anyway right now. So I'm unfortunately the wrong person to ask that question to. But if anyone else here has any better info, please offer up your knowledge to Noisy Boy there if you can. It'd be great to hear someone else chime in too. And Andrea, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. He says, hey, Matt, I appreciate your review on the Integra Type S. Makes me feel better about my order, just waiting on delivery whenever that happens. Well, congrats on the order. I don't know, again, what you prefer and, what you're hoping for out of it, but it's a fantastic car, and I'm confident that hopefully it will live up to your expectations. It is amazing, and yeah, it's such a good car. There's so many times this week when I just had it this past week. I really rushed out that review. I actually uploaded the video before they took the car away. They were taking it the next morning. But there's so many times this past week where I drove that thing and I was just like, man, this car is so good. And it's not like there's other cars. There's other cars where it's fun. It's a big laugh and it's hilarious. You know, like I'm daily driving a Charger Scat Pack or something like that. Like that's like, oh, this is a fun week. I'm burning tires everywhere and it's loud and hilarious and obnoxious and ha ha ha. Like that's good. That's a good fun car too. But like there's like good and then there's like good, like deeply good, where like they really perfected everything, kind of good, where it's like, man, they nailed everything. And you can tell that like they obsessed over this and they like they really perfected that car. And it's just, I think it's maybe just something that comes with also driving a lot of cars and having a lot of experience driving, and not just like being a reviewer or anything, but I'm just saying like people who have owned a lot of cars or people that have been able to drive and experience a lot of stuff, whether you work at a dealership or you just had a lot of car buying history in the past. I think that's where those kinds of cars really shine, because you know what bad shifters feel like and what good shifters feel like, and how rare it is to get a really good shifter like you get in the Integra. And that gives you a whole new appreciation for that. And, if you've driven enough stuff that has crappy throttle response and good throttle response, like, how that can sometimes be, a toss up and a mixed bag that isn't always a guarantee with other companies. And just like the steering and just every single thing, every single way, I was like, this is awesome. And like you saw in the review, like even the exhaust after, like originally I was like, oh, this isn't, in a first test drive, I'm like, wow, this isn't as loud as I was hoping it would be. And it's not as crazy over the top as I was hoping it would be, like the Elantra N, which should probably, in a test drive, an Elantra N will probably make a bigger impression, because it's like, oh man, it's got all this drama and it's got all this craziness and these sounds are piped in and it's all this like stimulation with the Elantra N. And in the Integra, it still has that, but it's more subtle. And it's the kind of stuff, like I said in my review, where you appreciate. And after the week had passed, I was like, actually, I like this exhaust. Like, it's amazing. It's actually slightly better than the Elantra N in some ways, because it feels more organic and natural, less artificial with the crackles and pops, which again, I love in the Elantra N regardless, and the Kona N and the others that have that kind of thing too. But it just, yeah, I could go on all day, like I did in the Integra review. I could go on all day about how amazing that car is, as I'm sure many of you are probably tired of hearing, because every single person that's driven it has been saying the same crap for the past few weeks. But there's seriously such a good car. So huge congrats on your order. I think you've made a great choice. Again, we'll see what you think about it after you've driven it a while, but I loved it. Let me see some other. I know I'm getting behind on the member questions here. I don't want to fall too far behind here. And so Chandra Chris says car news has just been stale. I mean, there's lots of stuff that's coming out. It's just that it comes down to what kind of cars you like. If you're excited about the EV switchover and you're following all that, it can be really exciting. But for those that are dreading that, it's obviously just like more bad news every week. And there was even someone who commented recently, was like, I used to love these weekly updates, but now it's just like too heartbreaking to watch, because it's just like there's nothing good anymore and all that. And I still would argue, again, you have great gas powered stuff coming out every day, like the Integra Type S and many others. But I know there's a lot of the news is dominated by the electric stuff, since that's what's, all the new stuff. But I can totally appreciate both sides and understand, both viewpoints there. But it's might make it tough. We'll see. The weekly updates may just die off because there's not enough interest in the electric stuff someday, if that's eventually all there is to talk about in the future. For the most part, is electric stuff and expensive exotics that are the last things that are gas powered or whatever. I'll probably just have to quit doing the weekly updates, because no one's going to want to hear about that. And Fook says, I wish Honda is going to bring back the Element. Would make so much more sense than the Passport. Yeah, I mean, I think Passport certainly has a place. I think they need to, I feel like they should have just done something a little more unique with the Passport. But, hopefully they'll do a new version based on the new Pilot here, and that'll at least freshen it up. But as far as the Element, I agree. A new Element would be fantastic and would sell really well, I'm guessing. I'm totally with you there on that one. Triton Car guesses, I would see the 300 being electric over the Charger and Challenger. Yeah, totally. But seems like unless Dodge changes their plans, it's going to be the other way around, which is interesting. He says, I don't imagine the diehard Hemi fans being excited about an EV. Yeah, I mean, I think I was talking about this a few weeks ago, where in the one conference call I was on with Dodge and their CEO, he was saying that in their focus groups, which again is, kind of tricky to say if that's going to be the broader response once you amplify that number. But in their focus group, supposedly, it's been like basically, I think they said 2/3 of people, whenever they saw what Dodge is doing with the future stuff, said they would actually consider getting rid of their V8 powered Challenger Charger for this new thing that's coming. So, we will see. It might just really knock everyone's socks off. And, it convinced people. I mean, there's a lot of people who are convinced just by power, and a lot of these Dodge people, they want to be the fastest thing at a red light. Guess what's the fastest thing at a red light? The electric car. Just the way it is. So, it depends on how much those people really love that sound and that power delivery. But for the people that care about speed, it's marketing stuff from Dodge, but it's right. Like, performance made them do it. If you want the best dragster performance, you go electric. And I've said a lot of people they're always, getting grumpy in the comments on any kind of, like even people in the Integra comment section were like, oh, well, my Scat Pack's way faster for 40 grand. And it's like, yeah, well, if you want the fastest thing in a red light, go buy a Tesla Model S Performance. They're like 45 grand brand new right now. Buy that, smoke everyone for 45 grand. Like, anyone that cares about straight line and speed, you're doing it wrong if you don't have a Tesla Model S Performance right now, or something more expensive that's electric. But they're the fastest off the line. They always have the perfect launch. And so if you care about that bragging right, which I think is silly, but if you do, you're doing it wrong if you're not having an electric car right now, honestly. Let me see. So Mike says 75 to 80 grand. I would have guessed 65 for the S2000. Maybe, but I mean, look at the Supra. Supra was, it is 63 or whatever it is, right? Or Supra, is it? Or maybe, no, it's maybe like 55. I'm getting my numbers mixed up. But still, like, Supra's 55 with a partnership with BMW, with a BMW supplied motor and transmission and all that stuff. And they still can't make the Supra any cheaper than, 55 or so. So, I don't see Honda being able to do anything remotely that cheap. 65 grand, I think, is optimistic. I would love to be proven wrong, but I'm just telling you right now, especially with inflation and stuff too, where 30 is the new 20, pricing wise, just buckle up. Nothing is going to be cheap if Honda does come out with something like that. And Raphael said, I said that about the Supra. Toyota could have done it completely in-house, but would anyone have paid 80 to 85 grand for it? Exactly. I'm glad I'm not the only one with that opinion. Totally agreed. If you want something totally engineered by Toyota that's, a sports car, there's the RCF and there's the LC500. Guess what? They're 75, 80, 90, $100,000. There's your Toyota sports car. There you go. No one wants to pay it. So yeah, like you said, it's one of those things. You can't have your cake and eat it too, unfortunately. It's just the way it goes. And Goth Harker said, I know some people don't consider them true sports cars, but I miss the days of the Prelude, the Civic Del Sol. My friend had a Prelude and a Del Sol, both fun cars. Del Sol was a blast. That was such a fun little idea. And yeah, I wish, we were in a world where people bought two doors again, because then you could justify stuff like that, and two-door Integras and everything else that everybody wants, but yeah, Del Sol was so fun. That's such a 90s vehicle that just, could only exist really in that decade, I think, in many ways. It'd be so great to see a new one, but yeah. That makes me sentimental. Jay says, I've heard Honda enthusiasts mentioning the S660 powertrain or components as well as Type R components. So hopefully more info on it. I'll try to find the info on it and send it to you. I appreciate that. If it's S660 powertrain, then you'll have the problem that it'll be cheap, but it'll also be slow. And then everyone was like, wow, what has less horsepower than a Miata? It has less horsepower than a G86. Like, this has less horsepower than the old S2000. What do I want that for? It's... Again, I can already see, maybe it's just because I've been doing this too long, but I can already anticipate the negative comments before they ever even happen. It's just, you can see them coming from a mile away. Chandra Chris says, a friend of mine and his wife are buying a 2023 Crosstrek. Any concerns on it that they need to look at before taking delivery? I will be posting up my Crosstrek review. It's going to be next, not this coming week, but the following week, I think. And I'll have an updated members schedule there with all my reviews here. I'll be posting tomorrow. But Crosstrek was solid. It's good. I mean, it's drives basically the same as the Impreza I did a review on, so you can check out that video if you haven't for my thoughts on that platform and all that. Well, you're talking 2023, so that's 2024. So if you're talking about the old previous generation, they seem to be really solid. I drove one a couple years back. Those are great. The only thing I would tell people about Subarus is they're not quite as reliable as they, I think, have a perception of being. If they're stock and you do take care of them, like if you flush the CVT fluid every 30,000 miles, 50,000 miles, something like that, they can be reliable, but those motors like to leak oil, around the 100,000 mark. It's just one of those things, like, people buy them thinking they're as reliable as Toyotas and Hondas, and they're just not, in my experience. And I could be wrong, but if they leak oil, they need gaskets sooner than a Honda or a Toyota or anything like that. Like if you want something that runs forever, get a Toyota, bottom line, or Honda as an honorable runner-up. But I think Toyota is still the king as far as reliability goes. But assuming they're not keeping it for the next 10 or 15 years, Crosstrek's great, and I'm sure it'll be great for them. A lot of people love them. They sold 155,000 of them last year for good reason, I'm sure. So still a really solid car. So I'm going to try and get caught up on the other member questions here, but I do have to sign off here relatively soon. I don't think I'll be able to go the full 2 hours. But Mike says, Matt, are engineering costs much higher because the standard customers expect on performance cars is so high, like they have to invest way more to get the product like they want? Yes, that's basically it. It's just they really got to do more R&D work. If you're engineering a Honda Pilot, you can take that around the local roads and just, you don't have to do anything crazy. I guess if it's an SUV, you maybe take it on a few off-road trails, but it doesn't, you don't have to really put it through the ringer that much outside of the usual, like, does it handle extreme freezing temperatures? Does it handle extreme heat okay? As long as you get the basic stuff down, then it's like you just dial in the steering and the handling and stuff for how you think it should feel, and you wash your hands and call it a day. Whereas with the performance stuff, you have to benchmark it. People are going to compare that stuff more from a dynamic standpoint, whereas not that many people that are test driving a Pilot are going to take the Telluride for a test drive and really put them both on a back road like I do. And like, okay, well, which one has more body roll? Really dissect it. Like, it's like, oh, this one has more cup holders, I'm sold. And that's, so whenever you're talking about sports cars, yes, there's a lot more thought that has to go into that. And so you got to take it to the Nürburgring, and you got to do, 1,000 laps of the Nürburgring to really make sure nothing breaks whenever people track them, because otherwise there's a whole frenzy like you're seeing right now with the GR86 and the BRZ of people saying, oh, these are blowing up at the track. What the heck? You got to make sure you try and avoid those things ahead of time. So it takes a lot more time. And, and I mean, they did a ton of that stuff for the GR86 and BRZ and still now have this issue. So that's not even foolproof, but the idea is to hopefully weed that stuff out. That takes time. That takes money. You're talking about, flying these engineers all over the world and, having them work these, hours and hours of doing this extra stuff beyond the Call of Duty of a regular, development thing for a regular vehicle. So there's a lot of that. And it's also just engineering higher performing stuff, where, you don't have to reinforce an engine as much if it's not revving to 9,000 RPMs. And so you can use cheaper materials and cut costs there, or, find other ways. There's all those things that just go into it. And then again, the bottom line, the sucker punch is that then you're talking about way lower volumes. If people bought S2000s as much as they bought Honda Pilots, then, you could, again, easily justify that stuff a little bit more. Like, yes, you still have all those hurdles I mentioned beyond a regular vehicle, but at least you'd have the volumes and the profits coming in to, then justify that. But with these sports cars, you got to have a fatter profit margin to pay off that loan of your development costs faster. Because again, it's all about the hype. And then it's also about just like, these things, you got to keep them up to date, and you got to have the higher performing, version coming 3 years later, and, refreshes and keep it fresh and new special editions. And it's a never ending thing. And so, they got to pay these things off with really thick profit margins. And that means expensive prices. And then the heartbreaking thing about it is, you go through all that hassle, you go through all those hoops, and you manage to make it to production against all the odds, like we saw with GR Corolla, like we see with Integra Type S, Civic Type R, all these cars like if you watch the Savage East video on the Integra Type S and how they fought to get that exhaust on that car, you do all this stuff and you work so hard, and then you say, here you go, it's for sale. And then guess what? The dealers come in and slap you right across the face and say, no, it's not. It's going to sit in our showroom for a year while we try and get greedy and rich off of it. And then they don't sell, because obviously anyone with half a brain isn't going to pay these huge markups. And so then all that work goes for nothing because of a dealer. So not to be like, really like depressing here in this live stream, but like these are the realities. And so when we're talking about these dream things, that, I roll my eyes even more than the average person probably does when I see these reports about S2000s coming back and stuff. And especially, again, knowing that I know these car companies, they want to make it happen. I know these people that do these product plannings for these companies, many of them, and, they desperately want to do this stuff, but their hands are tied. Imagine how frustrating it would have to be like where we are, where we love this stuff and we want to do it, and we actually had the power to make it happen, but then our hands are tied because of the market and the realities of just economics. It's just, that would drive me crazy. That's probably one of the toughest parts about being a product planner, is knowing what you could do in a perfect world but can't. Even though you have the green light, green button to say go, it's just that you can't do it because you would tank the company. It's just, yeah. Anyway, this is taking an interesting turn here in this live stream. Sorry for the reality talks here. But anyway, Wild Frame says it's really when you drive a crappy car, you start to appreciate the good builds of the others in the same price point. Very true. And Goth Rocker, thanks for chiming in there about the Crosstrek there for Chris. And Jay says he enjoys the weekly news, especially whenever I can get a drink in with you virtually. Yeah, this time I'm only having some tea, but cheers to you. Thanks for joining in here for the live stream. And yeah, we'll see if there's any news updates that require a drink in the future here. But so far, it hasn't been anything worth drinking about too much. 2023, as far as the car world goes, at least. Okay, last few questions here. So Tom says, kind of sad the new EcoBoost Mustang doesn't have an optional manual transmission. It's very much a bummer. I hope they maybe do it on some type of like SVO or some type of limited production, because they have the parts there. It shouldn't, as far as talking about those realities, I think the manual take rate for GT was like 27% for the 2024 so far. So not huge, but also not terrible. So you would think they still have it on the parts shelf from the previous generation. It still fits it, since it's the same car underneath essentially for the S650, pretty much. They could do it. So I'm hoping that they do for something down the road with EcoBoost. We will see. And Yavinder says, hey, Matt, do you know if the new Land Cruiser is going to be for sale in Canada? The previous gen wasn't available in Canada for some reason. Interesting. I would assume that it will, especially if it's, I don't know why the old one wasn't. So maybe if there's some reason why the old one wasn't, then they'll use that same reason for the new one maybe. But I will ask if, I go on any kind of Land Cruiser thing. I will certainly ask. I'm assuming there's something coming soon, since we're starting to get teasers. So hopefully, I don't know, when the Land Cruiser is coming, but whenever it does, I will certainly ask about Canadian availability for you and for everyone else in Canada that I'm sure would love it. But I would assume, if I had to guess, I would say that it should come to Canada. I don't see any good reason from my, outside looking in perspective. I don't see any reason why they couldn't bring it, but yeah, we will see. But I would say be cautiously optimistic that it could come to Canada. And Two says a GTR with electric motors driving the front. That would be a fun combo. And Jeremy says, hi, thanks for stopping in, Jeremy. I really appreciate it. Goth Rocker says, still a new Nissan Z for 90 grand if interested. Yep, I'm sure there's lots of Nissan dealers that would happily do that deal. So I see we have a final member question here, probably, and then we'll sign off. Wild Frame says, economy from scale is one of the best instruments these companies have. So when you want some crazy boutique car and engine, it will be either slow, cheap, or very expensive. No other way. Exactly. It's good. I think, me and Savage Geese and many others kind of talk about these realities a lot of times, especially whenever there's blowback over a new car coming out that isn't what people want it to be. It's one of those things you got to go to the bat for these product planners and for these company executives, when everyone's like, why didn't they make the Integra a two-door? Because no one buys two-doors. They can't even keep the two-door Civic around. That's why. Like, it's not hard. Like, look at the sales numbers. I mean, look at how few GT or GRD6s and stuff they sell, even with that being pretty hyped up and pretty impressive from a product standpoint. It's like, these things are tough to do, and I think, honestly, we've been kind of spoiled this past decade or two. Honestly, we've been really living in a golden era of horsepower that we've never seen before. No one expected any kinds of crazy horsepower like this ever before in history. And then, we had these horsepower wars really starting up with the muscle car stuff and the Hellcat age and all these crazy things. We were living in this steroid pumped up, car generation, essentially, that just, humans have never been able to have in the past. And it's just, this crazy thing, people used to think a fun car was, some of the 200 horsepower. And there still are very, very many fun cars with 200 horsepower that are carrying that torch, like the Civic SI and stuff. That's that kind of old school fun, but it's just like so many people expect so much for nothing. And it's just unreliable. It's just not unreliable, but it's just unrealistic, basically, but Anyway, Double Strike Photo says, have a great week, Matt. Enjoy those backgrounds. Thank you very much. I hope you guys all have a great week as well. Fuchs says, have a great week as well. And everyone, and Garth Walker said, Infiniti Q60 Coupe was a beautiful car. Should have sold better. I totally agree. I love it when I see it. I may buy one down the road, but I like sedans more. Yeah, Q60 is great. You're right. Another very underappreciated car. People want an all-wheel drive Z, or you want, more luxurious Z. There you go. It's been on sale for 6 years now, and everyone's been sleeping on it. It's like everyone's excited about the Z. It's like the Q60 has had that motor for 5 years and no one cared. But it's great to see. I think Q60 might be one that someday will have a following that it never had previously. But anyway, Trent Carglass says, have a great week, everyone. Challenger Christy. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate that. And thanks for being okay with me hopping off here a little early. But thank you all very much for joining here on the live stream. Have a great week. And I'll see you guys next week for the next live stream. And lots of cool stuff here coming this week as well. And take care. And I'll see you guys in the next one.